Hi loves, you're welcome back to another tutorial with Eco Designs to Fit. My name is Chiwendo, and if this is your first time coming across my channel, you are welcome. Today we are going to be drafting out a busty blouse with a built up neckline. If this sounds like what you're interested in learning, keep on watching. Let's get started. So this dress is going to come with an hourglass shape for it to be beautiful, just like the one you can see on the screen. Now the first thing you're going to do is come down from your paper by 3 inches. So you're going to be leaving out 3 inches before marking out your shoulder line. So here is my shoulder line. I'm going to label it, and then from there we are going to start inputting the vertical measurement. Our vertical measurements are the bust points, the under bust point, the waist points, and then to the length of the blouse. Now please, you have to measure out your front waistline and the back waistline, because they are usually not the same when it comes to a matured woman body. Okay, because we have bust in front and the back is very flat, so you need this for this particular tutorial. Now I've marked out my bust point of 11 inches. I am marking out my under bust point of 14 inches. I've drawn them across, and now I'm going to mark out my waist point, front waist point of 17 inches. Okay, and you can see that all my points are starting from the shoulder line. So I'll place my tape on my shoulder and mark out the bust point 11 inches, the under bust is 14, and then the waist is 17 inches. And I'm going to use my straight ruler to draw them across just like this. Now I'm going to label all my points. So I have the bust point, the waistline, I have the under bust point as well, and I have my full blouse length or the hip point. Okay, now after this I'm going to input my neck width for the front. So I'm going to be making use of 3 by 3 inches for the neck width and the neck depth of the front. Now after marking out the neck width, I went ahead to divide my shoulder into 2 and marked it out. So whatever shoulder width you have, go ahead, divide by 2 and mark out. I also went ahead to go down by 3 inches for my neck depth and then connected it with my French curve. Now on the shoulder line, I'm going to go down by 1.5 inches for my shoulder slope, connect it back to the neck width, and on the bust points I'm going to ensure that I have my shoulder divided by 2 as well, and then go up from there by 2 inches. This becomes my chest line. I'm going to connect it to the shoulder slope, and then I'm going to connect my chest line across like this. Now I'm going to label it. This is my chest line, and I'm going to divide this armhole depth into 2 and then mark the middle. Now I will go in by 1/2 inch, and the next step is for me to come over to the chest line and divide my bust circumference by 4. After dividing it, I'm going to mark it out, and then I'm going to connect my armhole curve just like this. Now after this, I'll move over to the bust points and I'll be coming in by 4 inches. This 4 inches is my bust span measurement. Okay, my nipple to nipple measurement is 8. I divided it by 2 and that gave me 4. So I'm inputting it on the bust points, on the waistline, on the under bust points too, and also on the hip points. Now I went ahead to use my straight ruler to connect them together, and I'll come over to the waistline and I'll mark out 1 inch on this side. I will move over to the under bust points and mark out 2 inches on these parts, and then from the waist I'm going to go down by 6 inches for my dart depth. After that, I'll move over to this side and I'll mark out 1 inch on the waistline as well. And then I'll move over to these points and I'll mark out 1/2 inch on the under bust point as well. This means that I've successfully removed 2.5 inches on the under bust point and then 2 inches on the waistline for my dart intake. Now from the bust point, I went down by 1/2 inch. And after that, I'm going to connect all these dart legs together. Okay, Now you guys, you can as well make use of 1 inch on both sides. Okay, now what I mean is you can, on the under bust points, go in and out by 1 inch on both sides, but I've decided to do mine like this because this is just a dart intake. Okay, and it all depends on the body size that you are working with. Don't worry, by the time we replace this dart and join it together, every shape is going to come back to normal. Okay, not minding the way the dart legs are looking right now. Now you can see that I've also connected using my curve from the under bust points up to the 1/2 inch below the bust point line. I'll move over to the armhole and I'm going to measure out my round armhole. All right, after measuring it, divide it into two, and I'm going to also bring it down just like this and mark it out. Now after this, I'm going to bring in my tape and I'm going to mark out 1/2 inch on the upper part and the down parts, and I'm going to connect it back to the bust points using my French curve, as you can see. So here we are using the armhole princess dart for the fronts. Can you see? So now after this, the next thing we are going to do is go ahead and extend this part of the dart by 1 inch, and I will blend it up. And also I'm going to check whatever that intake that I removed from there, and I will replace it on the chest line and then connect my new armhole. Now if you don't extend this 1 inch right at the armhole, you are going to like run short of fabric by the time you want to join the center front and the side fronts. So it is very important. Now I'll move over to the under bust points and I will check the dart intake, and the next thing I'm going to do is divide my round armhole circumference by 4, mark it out, and I will also replace my darts that I took out for the under bust point. After that, I'll move over to the waistline and I'll divide my waist circumference by 4. I will mark it out, and then I will replace just one of the darts. Okay, remember that I took out 2 inches on the waistline for my darts, but I'm going to replace just one of it because I want a cinched waistline for the waist. Okay, like we want an hourglass shape right there. Now I'll move over to the hip line and I will divide my hip circumference by 4, mark it out. Now I will extend this hip by 3 inches. Can you see? So I'm adding up extra 3 inches on the hip line, and after that I'm going to connect all my points together. Now you see this particular 3 inches extension on the hip points. You don't have to joke with that because that is what is going to give this particular blouse the hourglass shape that we are looking for. Okay, now after this we are going to move over to the bust points, and from there we are going to come down by 2 inches. Just like this. This is the difference between the front length and the back length, and that is going to be serving as the bust dart. All right, now from here I'm going to move over to the neckline. All right, so that we can work on the build up neckline. Now on the neck width, I'm going to extend by 2.5 inches. You can as well do 2 inches, but because I don't want to like add up any extra shoulder sewing allowance right there, I just decided to extend by 2.5 inches. Okay, so now after doing that, I went ahead to connect it back to the shoulder line, and equally I'm going to have to now come out by 0.75 inches on this part. All right, now after this I'm going to measure out my neck depth. So from the shoulder line I'm going to go down by 7 inches to 8 inches. It all depends on how deep you want your front neckline to look, but I made use of 7 inches. Now after this I'm going to use my curve to connect from the extended neckline, okay, down to this 7 inches depth. So that is that for my neck depth, and then I'm also going to use my curve to blend up my shoulder just like this. All right, and that is that for the front block. Next, I'm going to go ahead and measure my shoulder just like this. You have to measure this shoulder because the back and the front shoulder has to align. Okay, they have to be the same so that they will be able to align properly by the time you join them together. So we are done with that. I'm going to set it aside so that we cut out the back before cutting out our pattern. All right, so now here is my fresh pattern paper. From the center back, I'm going to come in by 1 inch for my zipper allowance. So I've marked it out vertically down to the hip points, and I am trying to connect them together. Now I'm going to label this my zipper allowance. Now after this, whatever it is I'm drafting out has to start just after this zipper allowance. But then please do not forget to come down by 3 inches for your extension of the neckline. Okay, so guys, I've marked out my starting points, which I've just labeled. I'm going to now mark out my bust point of 11 inches. Okay, I'm equally going to do that on this part, and after that I'm going to go ahead and connect it across just like this. Now after this, I'm going to equally place my tape on the shoulder and mark down to 15 inches for my waist point of the back. Remember, the front waist point is 17 and the back is 15 right now. So I'm going to connect it across, and then the length is 25 inches as you can see, which is the full length of this paper. Now I'm going to label it. I have my bust point, I will have the waist point, and then the hip points. Now I'm going to mark out my neck width of 3 inches and equally mark out my shoulder 8 inches. I'm going to mark out my neck depth of 1 inch. And then after that, I'm going to use my curve ruler to connect it. I will extend it over to the zipper allowance as well. And then for the shoulder slope, I'm going to come down by 1.25 inches. I'll connect it back to the neck width, and then I'm going to mark out my shoulder divided by 2 on the bust points, go up by 2 inches for my chest line, and then I'm going to connect my armhole depths. So the distance between the shoulder slope and the chest line is the armhole depth, if you have been following my tutorial. And I connected my chest line across. Now I'm going to divide my armhole depth into 2 and then mark the middle, go in by 0.125 inch. Now I'm going to divide my bust circumference by 4 and mark it out on the chest line, and I'm going to go ahead and connect my back armhole just like this. Okay, now after this, next I'm going to mark out my nipple to nipple measurements, which is 4 inches. Remember, my bust span is 8 divided by 2 is 4. I'll mark it out on the bust point, on the waistline, and then down to the hip. I'll connect with my straight ruler like this, and then next I'm going to go down to 6 inches from the waistline, and then on the waist point I'm going to mark 1 inch on both sides. Okay, so I'll mark out 1 inch on this part, and then I'll mark out 1 inch on the other side, and I will connect my darts. Okay, just like this. Now after this, I'm going to move over to the waistline, and I'll divide my waist circumference by 4, mark it out, and just like the front, remember I replaced just one of the darts. I'm going to repeat the same thing for the back, and then after that I'm going to move over to the hip, divide my hip circumference by 4, mark it out just like this, and then I'm going to extend the hip by 3 inches. Okay, so I've done that, and I'm going to connect all the points together as you can see. So initially I connected to the actual hip points, just like this, just so that you can see the extension properly. Okay, and then after that I went ahead to connect to the 3 inches extension like this. Okay, as it stands now, I am done drafting out the bodice, so I'm going to move over to the neckline so that we can modify the back neckline as well. So I'll come over to the shoulder points and I will extend it by 2.5 inches, just like this. I will equally do the same thing on the parts. Okay, and then I'll go ahead and connect it vertically and horizontally, just like this. Can you see what I'm doing? Now after this, I will go ahead and input my new neck depth. So for the new neck depth, I'll come down by 1/2 inch, and then I will connect it and extend it to the zipper allowance. After this, on the shoulder area, I'm going to go out by 0.75 inches, and then after that I'm going to connect it back to the neckline, just like this. Okay, and please, after you connect this, measure it and ensure that the back shoulder and the front shoulder is the same. Okay, just like I measured the front. Now we'll come over to the waistline. Because we are making use of a zipper, we need to contour the waist so that we avoid any form of zip bulge. So from the zipper allowance, I came in by 1/2 inch, and I'm going to extend my chest line across, connect it to the chest points, and then from the waistline again, I'm going to go down by 6 inches and connect it equally to this 6 inches mark. Now after this, from this 1/2 inch, I'm now going to mark out 1 inch outward, which is going to be my zipper allowance. I hope you understand. And equally go down to 6 inches because I need to connect this properly. So as you can see, we have modified the zipper area, and this will help avoid any form of zip bulge. Now guys, after this, I'm going to have to move over to the shoulder because I want to make use of the shoulder princess dart for the back. I'll divide my shoulder into 2 and then mark out the middle. Now after this, I will go ahead and connect it back to the bust points. Okay, so this is what I want to use for the back. Now if you want to make use of the armhole princess dart for the back, go ahead and divide your round armhole into 2, mark out the middle and connect it back to the bust points. All right, so guys, we are done with that, and now I'm going to have to go in by the side by just 1 inch. Okay, I don't want mine to look exactly like that of the inspiration. If you want yours to look like the inspiration, go up with about 4 inches and connect it back just like this. But for me, I did just 1 inch. Okay, now I've done that for the front, and I'm going to repeat the same thing for the back. So I went up by 1 inch and then blend it up like this, and that is it, you guys. Remember, if you also want it to look like the inspiration, go up by about 4 inches. Okay, so now I have my CF, I have my side front as well for the fronts. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it out. Now you have to pay good attention to how I'm cutting this out. It's actually very simple and straightforward. Okay, so first of all, I went ahead to cut out my neck depth and notched the neck depth points. Okay, now after that, I cut out my shoulder, and you can see I'm trying to cut out my center fronts. Can you see? Now after cutting out the center front, I will go ahead and cut out the remaining parts. You can see where I'm cutting out. I'm cutting through the new armhole, okay, not the old one, so please take note of that. Now after this, I'm going to go ahead and cut out the remaining parts of this, and please remember to close up your bust dart. It is very important. Okay, so we are still going to close that up. Just keep watching. I don't have much to say, only that you have to glue your eye to the screen. Okay, So you guys, once you glue your eye to the screen, you're going to understand exactly what I'm trying to do here. Now I am done cutting out that part of the cup, and I'm trying to close up my bust darts. Can you see? So please do make sure to close up your bust darts before you completely cut out the side. Do you understand? Now after closing it up, you will notice there is a little form of shortage. Go ahead and use your ruler and connect it properly, just like you can see me do, down to the waistline. And then please hold it, or you tape it down with your masking tape before cutting it out, okay? Just like you can see me doing. And after that, I'm going to cut out my sides, the hemline, and this is it. This is my center front and the side fronts. Now we're going to move over to the back, so we can as well cut out the back. So for the back, I started off by cutting out the neckline over to the shoulder, and after that I went through to the armhole and then to the side seam. All right, now the back is quite very simple, as you can see, so easy and straightforward. Now after this, I'm going to cut off my zipper, the extra allowance that I have on my zipper after contouring. I am done cutting that out. I went ahead to cut out the hemline, and then I'll move over to the shoulder, cut out my shoulder princess dart. So as you can see, I'm trying to cut out the side back, and after that I will probably cut off the remaining part of the darts, and that gives me the center back. So guys, this is it. I have my center back and my side back, and this is exactly how to cut out your busty blouse with a built up neckline. It is quite simple. In my next tutorial, I'll be showing you guys how to sew and join this together properly. I hope you find this tutorial helpful. If you do, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Also share it so that more people can get to see it. I will see you in my next one. Bye.